All of Greater Sydney, the Blue Mountains, the Central Coast and Wollongong will go into a lockdown with stay-at-home orders in place until midnight, Friday the 9th of July.
Tonight, breaking news, day 2 of a circuit breaker lockdown for several parts of New South Wales to deal with a major rise in COVID-19 cases over the past week. We'll have the latest information from New South Wales health authorities as Premier Gladys Berejiklian comes under fire for, in the words of her critics, not calling the lockdown a lockdown. It's Sunday the 27th of June. You're watching 6 News also tonight.
The vertebrae in my back's almost fully healed. The brace has come off. That's the brace I've worn for 18 hours a day for the last 3 months. But the ribs are not fully healed. They'll take a while, and the doctors tell me these next few weeks will be quite a painful adjustment to getting used to not having that brace on.
Dan's back. The Victorian Premier is set to return to work tomorrow after his horror fall in March that left him with several broken ribs and vertebrae damage. What can we expect to hear tomorrow, and what questions does the opposition want answered? And later, a special report as the final edition of Apple Daily rolls off the printing press in Hong Kong. China's growing crackdown on dissent comes under fire, whether it's in schools, universities or on the streets, as tensions with Beijing here at home boil over. Good evening, thanks for joining us this Sunday. We've got plenty of breaking news to bring you, so let's get straight into it. Several local government areas across Sydney are right now in the midst of a circuit breaker lockdown to deal with a major rise in COVID-19 cases over the past week. There are only 4 reasons to leave home: shopping for essentials, compassionate care, medical care, and work or learning that you can't do from home. Rules extremely similar to what was in place for the lockdown in early 2020. But the word lockdown has actually become a bit of a controversial point amongst some when talking about this latest COVID cluster, with Gladys Berejiklian seemingly a bit hesitant when using that term, generally just calling it a stay-at-home order, which it is, and telling a reporter that people can use whatever term they choose. Political reporter Christian Penny has the latest developments on the ground from Sydney.
Just over 24 hours ago, almost 6 million Sydney-siders went into 14-day lockdown after 12 new positive cases were identified. The announcement was made yesterday, just after 2 p.m.
All of Greater Sydney, the Blue Mountains, the Central Coast and Wollongong will go into a lockdown with stay-at-home orders in place until midnight, Friday the 9th of July.
Residents across all of Sydney, from the Central Coast to Wollongong and the Blue Mountains, can only leave home for 4 essential reasons: shopping for essential goods, to seek medical care or to take COVID testing or receive a vaccination, exercise outdoors in groups of no more than 10, or to undertake essential work or study. Last weddings for the rest of the lockdown were held today, with community sport cancelled. Funerals are allowed to go ahead with a maximum of 100 guests. The government clear that no one who's been in metropolitan Sydney is to leave the city. Fears over the virus getting into the regions.
Police have been tasked to be on the lookout for any vehicles that may have come from the Greater Sydney area, and I remind you that they have all sorts of technology these days, including recognition of number plates. Also remind you that the regional communities are very aware when they see someone from out of town arrive, and they'll make sure the police know.
There are rules for regional parts of New South Wales as well. 5 guests to homes, compulsory masks indoors, and outdoor venues capped at 50%, all in a bid to stop any spread from unknown cases. The list of exposure sites has grown to over 250 in areas from the city to Bankstown and Lakemba. To find a full list, go to www.health.nsw.gov.au. The Premier has insisted that nobody feel financial pressure because of the lockdown.
Nobody should feel stressed about their financial situation. There are provisions for us, and we will, as a state government, in the next few days, we'll be announcing support to businesses, and also the federal government support to household kicks in at a certain time, and obviously that will kick in. So nobody should feel stressed or pressure.
The pressure is being felt, though, with the lockdown due to expire on July 9th, at the end of the school holidays. Christian Penny, 6 News.
Now, if you remember the last lockdown in Melbourne, you'll recall that some on social media dubbed it Morrison's lockdown, and that hashtag seems to have stuck for these latest restrictions in Sydney. A statement from the ACTU said, quote, "The Sydney lockdown is the direct result of the Morrison government's inability to secure enough vaccines and manage the vaccine rollout." Doctors across the country have been reporting a number of people cancelling their appointments for the AstraZeneca vaccine, a surge in fact after we got that new advice that it's only being recommended to those over 60. We of course always want to hear your thoughts on this matter, so please let us know, who do you blame for this latest lockdown? Join the conversation using hashtag 6newsau in the comments below, or email us via our brand new email, contact@6newsau.com. Continuing with COVID, hundreds of Melburnians have been forced to isolate after an infected man got the virus over the border in New South Wales. A worker at a Sandringham dry cleaners caught the Delta variant at a birthday party hosted by his daughter in the Sydney suburb of West Hoxton. And now Victorian Premier Dan Andrews is set to make his return over 3 months after his horror fall that left him with several broken ribs and vertebrae damage. Senior reporter David Travers is what we can expect to hear tomorrow, and the questions the opposition wants answered.
Almost 4 months after his horror fall, Dan Andrews is finally returning to work tomorrow. The Victorian Premier injured himself slipping downstairs while getting ready for work in early March, and since then, James Merlino has been in charge. A lot has happened since Andrews' injury, including the 4th lockdown in Victoria and the ongoing COVID cluster in New South Wales, with restrictions easing across Melbourne in recent days, including up to 15 visitors in homes and theatres with up to 50% capacity. That's despite several new COVID-19 cases linked to the interstate outbreak, including a worker at the Sandringham dry cleaners who caught the Delta variant at a birthday party hosted by his daughter in the Sydney suburb of West Hoxton. Dan's return comes only a few weeks after the state opposition was accused of speaking conspiracy theories about his injury. We spoke exclusively to Liberal MP Brad Roswell about this earlier this month.
I'm not one who's into conspiracy theories, Leonardo, but the questions that are being put by the Shadow Treasurer are in fact that. They're questions. Clearly the government thinks that they have some credibility because Ambulance Victoria has responded to some of them. As I say, 5 of the 7. You would have to have been living under a rock not to have heard any number of rumours flying around. Perhaps the Shadow Treasurer's questions are an opportunity for the government, perhaps even the Premier, to clear the air, get on with it and get over it in advance of his return.
Police have now increased their numbers at Victoria's border with New South Wales to enforce travel bans, with over 250 officers now dedicated to patrolling the border towns.
Queensland's Court of Appeal has ordered Clive Palmer's company MINERALOGY to pay just over $100 million over the collapse of Queensland Nickel. According to the ABC, Mr Palmer's lawyers last year argued that the $102 million represented loans from joint venture companies and therefore did not belong to Q&I, but the Court of Appeal has now upheld the liquidator's case. Liquidator John Park says the win is a great outcome for creditors following a long series of legal actions involving Mr Palmer and the company, which left 800 people out of work after it collapsed in 2016. Barnaby Joyce has been accused of having a history of groping women by a WA Labor MP. The comments about the newly re-elected Nationals leader and Deputy PM were made by Jackie Jarvis during a speech in the state's upper house, where she was speaking out in support of her friend Catherine Marriott, who was previously accused Joyce of sexual harassment. Those claims were denied, and an investigation by the Nationals was inconclusive. Take a look.
In 2014, I was the WA winner of the Rural Women's Award. And myself, along with other state winners and runners-up, all gathered in Canberra ahead of the National Award event. And we were told, a number of us were told by a person involved in organising the event, to be careful of Barnaby Joyce because he had a history of groping women. Now, it is very long day, so I just want to make myself absolutely clear. I was the WA representative in Australia's leading award for rural women, and I was warned that the then Federal Agricultural Minister was known to sexually harass women at events.
Mr. Joyce has denied the allegations. The final edition of Apple Daily rolled off the printing press on Thursday. It was Hong Kong's last remaining pro-democracy newspaper, described by China's so-called government mouthpiece, the Global Times, as seeking revolt and, perhaps ironically, manipulating public opinion. Apple Daily is just the latest victim of Beijing's growing crackdown on dissent, which extends to schools and universities and even the streets. Chief reporter Connor 4K has this special report.
1:45 a.m. Wongo, Hong Kong. This is not the line to a concert or testing clinic, but to a newsstand selling the final edition of Apple Daily, Hong Kong's last remaining pro-democracy newspaper that was reportedly pressured to stop printing by Beijing. Chinese government mouthpiece The Global Times wrote of Apple Daily that the outlet has greatly exceeded the information function of the media and turned into a political revolt seeker, adding any media outlet that has gained inciting power to oppose the mainstream will not be spared.
Well, it's profoundly sad. The media group that's they're closing down was founded by Jimmy Lai, who was himself, like so many people in Hong Kong, a refugee from the brutalities and the repression of the Chinese Communist Party in China itself.
All 1 million copies of the Apple Daily were snapped up by 8:30 a.m. This wellspring of support read as a symbol of Hong Kong's resentment towards the Chinese Communist Party. With the closure of Apple Daily, the US and UK remarked on the loss of freedom of expression in Hong Kong, saying it was forced by intensifying repression from Beijing. So what's behind this growing crackdown on dissent? He pledged to improve China's human rights record, but when President Xi Jinping rose to power in 2012, the crackdown is said to have escalated. This graph from the Wall Street Journal shows expenditure on public security has nearly doubled since the beginning of Xi's presidency. In 2013, a leaked internal communication known as Document Number 9 warned against promoting false ideological trends such as press freedom and constitutional democracy. This Thursday, China will mark 100 years since the establishment of the CCP, managing to avoid the fate of many Eastern European communist parties and the Soviet Union.
The relentless sweep of communism.
It is now at a position of unchallengeable power. Some dissenting scholars in Beijing say it's now looking to establish historical legitimacy. So if perfectibility breaks on the rock of dissent, China will stop at no end to ensure its citizens are surveilled and the critics among them silenced. This is what social control in the digital age looks like. It's called a social credit system and is taking shape in China.
Facial recognition, body scanning and geo-tracking, matched with your personal data and online behaviour, will power the social credit system.
The behaviour of every citizen is watched and scored. ProPublica and the New York Times say these videos, among thousands of others, are proof of propaganda. Cogs in a well-oiled machine designed to keep the CCP in power for another century. Connor 4K, 6 News.
Iran has slammed a new report that accused them of incompetence and recklessness over the downing of a Ukrainian plane last year as highly politicised. The report, made by Canadian forensic experts, found that while the shooting of Flight PS752 was not premeditated, it still didn't clear Iranian officials of responsibility for what happened. But still, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says the report had concluded Iran was fully responsible for shooting down the plane. 176 people died in early January last year when the Ukrainian International Airlines crashed shortly after takeoff in Tehran. The search for people missing in the Miami building collapse is right now continuing, with over 100 people currently unaccounted for. Researchers say it may have been sinking into the earth as early as the 1990s and was reportedly deemed to be on unstable land last year. Officials say the efforts are dangerous as further rubble could collapse on them, as well as the potential for loose wires underground, with the death toll once again rising. US correspondent Jackson Gosnell has the details.
A lot happening here in the U.S., especially in Surfside, Florida, where a building collapsed in the middle of the night. Many questions remain about how that happened, but let's get to some of the details. We know that right now 159 people are presumed missing and 4 people have been confirmed dead. Yesterday, it was reported that 99 were missing. However, that number increased due to a miscalculation. Now 159, almost 160 people unaccounted for. The building collapsed in the middle of the night in the middle section, and then a few minutes later, the other section nearest to it also collapsed. There is still one portion standing, but now there are people crying out for help, at least one person, according to officials, who are saying that they're there, they are alive, and they want help. However, the challenge remains to get them out, because all of these people are potentially entrapped under concrete and metal, and it becomes very difficult for officials to remove them without harming other people. There's been a reunification center for family members to reunite that's been set up nearby. However, as of yesterday, only one family had been reunited at that location. A lot of people are remaining hopeful that they will be able to locate their loved ones alive, and there has been a massive pouring support from all over the country, people praying for this area and hoping for the best. Despite the catastrophe and how tragic it is, there are people, again, who are very hopeful that there will be more people found alive and hopefully not any more fatalities. Of course, if there is more, we will be sure to update you on that. But that is what we have right now. We do know that Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida is at the site working with officials to coordinate them to ensure the best response is happening. We also know from the White House that President Biden overnight approved an emergency declaration which will allow the Federal Emergency Management Association to step in and assist there in Surfside, Florida. And of course, we'll continue to monitor the very latest, and our thoughts and prayers are with those in that state and community as they work to get everybody out and try and find more survivors. Again, we'll monitor the story from here in the U.S. I'm Jackson Gosnell. Back to you.
Back home, regional Australians are just days away from seeing a major change on their TV stations. As revealed earlier this year, Win Television will return to its affiliation with Channel 9 on July 1. That's this Thursday, after switching to 10 in mid-2016. That means 10 will go back to Channel 5 and will have its multi-channel seen on channels 50 to 54 as well. Promos about the affiliation swap have slowly begun to roll out, but despite both broadcasters seemingly positive about what's going on, there is a downside, being a lot less local news. As 6 News first reported in late May, Win will move to statewide bulletins for Queensland and Victoria, plus a combined bulletin in southern New South Wales that doesn't include Albury, and separate bulletins for Wollongong, Canberra and Tasmania. 9 News Local will air its final bulletin on Wednesday night, and Southern Cross is only expected to replace it with the bare minimum, that being short updates during the day. Of course, if you've got a question about this swap that you want answered without the PR spin, please do tag us on social media or email contact@6newsau.com. And now is Ivan and Sarah with what's coming up later tonight on WAMN News.
Thanks, Leo. Coming up on WAMN News, more accountability, calls for proper investigations following alleged police brutality and racial bias claims. A WAMN News exclusive.
Hands off my toys, the gel ball community rallies against the blaster ban.
Purpose-built quarantine facility to locate in Perth as negotiations begin.
A feature interview with Gel Ball Club President plus Dr. Andrew Miller's comment. Join us tonight on the WAMN News Facebook page and YouTube channel.
Right, thanks both Ivan and Sarah there. Now tomorrow's forecast right across the country. Brisbane partly cloudy, top of 21. Light rain and 16 in Sydney. Perfect lockdown weather there. 13 degrees in the nation's capital, 15 in Melbourne, 12 in Hobart, 17 in Adelaide, also 17 in Alice Springs, 19 in Perth, a chance of some light showers, and in Darwin a warm top of 31. And finally tonight, as Derby reported earlier, Victorian Premier Dan Andrews will be returning to work tomorrow, and now punters are betting on what he's going to wear and say. Sportsbet has revealed that his famous North Face jacket is considered a $3.75 chance to return ahead of a suit jacket at $1.25, while punters are supporting a no-tie option at $1.50 according to Channel 9. He's expected to thank Dan Andrews He's expected to thank acting Premier James Merlino, not himself, at $6, all Victorians at $4, Kath and the Kids at $2.75, and doctors, nurses and first responders at $1.85. My money's on him saying everybody right to go wearing the North Face jacket, but what do you think he'll say tomorrow? Join the conversation using hashtag 6newsau in the comments below, or email us via our brand new email. Don't make our inbox empty. contact@6newsau.com. That is 6 News for this Sunday evening. You can stay up to date with the latest headlines by heading to our website, 6newsau.com, and by following us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and Lit. Just search 6 News AU to find us. I'm Leonardo Puglisi. Thanks for your company. Good night.